everyone, and welcome to Moving Minds. Today we have with us Tanvi Malia. She is a neuropsychologist and the founder of Tanvi Malia's Elder Care Services, which provides at-home mental health care for the elderly. Over the past 8 years, Tanvi has worked extensively with people diagnosed with various neurodegenerative disorders like Alzheimer's, dementia, strokes, Parkinson's, etc., and their families, aiding better management and improving the quality of life. In today's Facebook Live, Tanvi will be addressing elderly emotional health during the current COVID-19 pandemic. As we know, coronavirus is all over the place, but older people are much more vulnerable. And in today's address, Tanvi will be talking about how we can care for their emotional health in this period of lockdown and also ensure that they remain safe. To begin today's live, Tanvi will talk to you all about we'll talk to you for about 10 minutes and then we'll open the floor for questions and answers. So please remember to add your questions as comments at the bottom over here in the Facebook Live. Over to you, Tanvi.
Thank you, Aarti, for the wonderful introduction. I will launch straight into it. I think all of us are aware how vulnerable the elderly are to COVID-19. Public health experts all over the world agree that physical distancing during this time is extreme about the toll that it can take on the mental health of the elderly. What we need for healthcare systems, communities, and families to recognize the mental health burden of physical distancing for the elderly, and we need to find ways to keep the elderly engaged and motivated. We also need everybody. We also need all these different stakeholders to come together to devise and implement strategies that could perhaps improve the elderly's compliance with social distancing. What I mean by that is, most families find it very difficult to get the elderly to follow, physical distancing. And I think if we devise strategies that could possibly keep them engaged, that will become easier. Thereby we can reduce the impact of COVID-19 on their mental health, and not just COVID-19 but also the lockdown. We shall discuss some of these strategies in today's talk. So before I launch into the strategies, I want to quickly go over some of the observations that were made by Professor Huali Wang, who is the Executive Vice President of Alzheimer's Disease International China. And she made these observations based on their experiences in Wuhan. So according to her observations, they observed that the elderly continued to stay at home and had difficulty accessing information. Uh, Even if they were able to access information online, they had difficulty understanding and remembering information about the disease. So again, in a country like India, how this is applicable is that most elderly that may have neurodegenerative disorders like Alzheimer's or dementias of different kinds, or have had stroke in the past, their degeneration is more or less undiagnosed, and it will come to fore in situations of extreme stress like this one. Um, also, because of the lockdown, a lot of the routine of the elderly has been disrupted, so that again will cause symptoms to exacerbate. Those who lived alone, what people in Wuhan found is that the people who lived alone face disorganized daily living due to greater demand on cognitive processing. So because a lot of the elderly who lived alone, they had to do a lot of things by themselves, which meant that on their brain, or on the processing of the brain, there was a greater stress. Uh, the people who lived at home, the elderly who lived at home, they found that they tended to be extremely anxious. There was increased stress or tension or irritability amongst these elderly, and the possible reasons why there would be a heightened anxiety or a heightened level of stress amongst these elderly could be again the change in their care systems, or in the carer or a community complete absence of carer, or possibly a change in their schedule. Now, moving on to what they found about the impact of physical distancing. So one is unscheduled home life. So this, which means that, all our parents and grandparents, they have a certain routine to their day. Post retirement, typically in India, what happens is that people pack their day with, different activities. And if you look at our parents or our grandparents, you will notice that they have a certain structure to their day, even if they have, retired. So maybe they will go for a walk in the morning where they will meet 10,000 people. They will possibly have tea with them. They will talk, they will interact, then they will come back home at a certain time, have a breakfast maybe, then either they'll have yoga or something, or some therapist coming in. Maybe they have music classes, or a lot of the elderly also have, a lot of the elderly women also go for satsangs. So there is a certain structure to their day. In the evening, maybe they go to a club somewhere and play cards, or maybe they just interact with people in the club that they have been meeting over the years, or maybe they volunteer somewhere. What has happened is, these are the kind of activities, or these are the kind of structures that bring meaning to the lives of the elderly. And now with the lockdown, since all of this has stopped, we need to kind of create another system, or we need to move as much of this schedule online as possible. So I'll discuss a little more about that as we go into the strategies. Another impact of the physical distancing that the experts in Wuhan recognized were that, they noticed that there was a declining memory and comprehension among the elderly post or through the period of the lockdown, where they were maybe finding it very difficult to cooperate with care, or they did not understand why they had to wear masks. Also, if there were elderly who had pre-existing neurocognitive problems, they saw that these symptoms worsened. Moving back, so these were some of the observations that were made in Wuhan by experts. While this is not the best time to make any stark changes in the routine of the elderly, it is important to help the elderly cope to the best of their ability. So the way we can do that is, we can definitely harness the power of technology, and that can go a long way in helping the elderly feel less isolated. One thing I would definitely recommend, and this is something that is a common recommendation by even according to the WHO, the World Health Organization, they've made a recommendation that families should stick to their daily routines as much as possible. Now, this is something that is extremely, or maybe easier, not extremely easy, but is easier for people of our generation, or maybe to an extent even maybe those 10 or 15 years elder to us. But as the acquaintance with technology goes down, in terms of age, this becomes harder, because when we are told that, okay, you don't have to go to work, it's very easy for us. We know how to access the internet, we know how to Zoom call, we know how to watch Netflix. We don't have any issue killing time, so to say, or we don't have any issue possibly occupying ourselves. Not everybody, but most people are not at a dearth of options. With the elderly, however, we need to understand that they may not be as fluent in technology as we are. So thinking of an app, or thinking of a game, or thinking of Netflix does not come very naturally to them. So it might be a good idea to sort of integrate them and help them move their schedule online as much as possible. So I'll quickly give you a few examples of how we have done this through our work. So some of the elderly we work with, and these include people in the earlier stages of dementia as well. The week leading up to the lockdown, and maybe the first week, 10 days of the lockdown, were extremely stressful, and were also uh, uh, were the ones where we saw a lot of heightened anxiety. But these were also the weeks where my team of psychologists was putting together, and was getting the elderly more acquainted with technology, and they were teaching them how to video call. They were trying to, we were trying to move all our sessions to video, if not video, at least a phone call, whatever works for them, because we also have to recognize that at this point we cannot make stark changes to anything, and we cannot expect them to learn anything brand new. new at this point. We just have to try our best and see what they can take in. And now it's week 3. It's week 3 of the lockdown, and most of the elderly that we work with now, not only are our sessions happening online, but also they have so for instance, like I said, if they some elderly, they used to go for satsang in the in the afternoon. Now they have satsang sessions on Zoom, where there is a lot of these elderly women who come together on the Zoom call and do it. And like I said, this also includes people in the early to mid stages of dementia, and not just people who are cognitively completely all right. Even in terms of so we have also seen that the idea is not how effective these sessions are. The idea is that doing these activities and trying to stick to that schedule uh, ushers in a sense of normalcy, and ushers in a sense of it keeps them engaged, which is what a lot of us need. Also, most of these avenues are also places where the elderly socialize. So helping the elderly transition these online will be extremely helpful in the long run, and in a lot of ways, not just to keep them engaged, but also cognitively speaking, it ensures better orientation. It also ensures that the elderly has a sense of purpose, and finds meaningful engagement. Another thing that the elderly could possibly do is take to writing. And so this is something that, so I'm also a daughter, and my dad is in his 60s, and my dad is somebody who is extremely active all the time. He's probably busier than any of us. He has many engagements in a day. He plays cricket. He has a team. He plays cricket every day, by the way. He walks every day. He has like 4 5 sets of people every day that he meets. He'll go to the club, etc. Now what happens is, so I was really worried when the lockdown was imposed, because I wasn't really sure how he's going to go from having so much activity, physical activity also, to almost being stuck at home, to put it in a. And one of the things that my dad took up, and I think that is something that I would really also recommend to most people, is writing. So he's currently writing down all experiences from his childhood, and he's reaching out to people who are a part of his childhood, and he's writing them down. And I mean, he's doing it and he's enjoying it. But this is also a fantastic activity for somebody who is diagnosed, or is even undiagnosed, and maybe having some memory issues, or is diagnosed to be in the early or the mid stages of Alzheimer's or dementia, or has had stroke in the past and there is some degeneration. The idea is that when when a person is thinking, or is jotting down, or is speaking about experiences from the past, like that long ago, from childhood, from like their 20s or their 30s or their 40s, they're essentially rehearsing the information that is present. So they are reminiscing what it's called reminiscence therapy. And there are certain formal ways to do it, but this is a great informal way to do it as well. And they're rehearsing that information. This is also something that I would recommend to the families. Most families are at a loss as to what to talk to the elderly about. When you call, uh, talk to them about their past. That's a very good topic. That's a topic that brings in a lot of familiarity, and the elderly or the person will be able to contribute quite a bit to that topic. The third recommendation I would make is if you are somebody who does not live with your parents and are extremely worried about them, or aren't sure how they are coping, set a rota of individuals that will call them, and maybe also try and engage them in group calls, etc. I have a colleague who on Sunday plays housey with her entire extended family on Zoom, and I think that includes everybody, uncles, aunts, and I think that's a great way again to ensure that there is some level of socialization that is present. uh, this may be a good idea to introduce the elderly to technology as well, if they are unable to do Zoom calls, or if they're unable to do video calls. And if it is possible for you to guide them over the phone, that's great. If not, if they a lot of the elderly that we work with have somebody that an attendant that lives with them. So what we have also done is we have also trained the attendant how to receive, etc., video calls and how to make video calls. And I think that has gone a long way in helping the elderly cope. uh, Another thing that I would coming to the anxiety, uh, news can be very triggering, and I think that's not just true for the elderly, that's also true for us. And I think in a lot of Heights pages itself, there is a lot of mention of how you can consume news. And really important that if the elderly does not have anything else to occupy themselves with, the most likely thing that will happen is the elderly will watch news back to back, or they will just keep the news channel on to kind of be informed various activities to them, so that they don't do this. Because when you're constantly engaged in news, it can be very triggering. Another also with the elderly, in the sense that they know that they the elderly are the ones that are most affected and the most vulnerable by COVID-19, and there is a certain sense of oh, what will happen to me. So overconsumption of news will again trigger that further. So it is best to do that. Also, when families talk to the elderly, it would be a good idea to stay away from conversations about COVID-19, especially alarmist conversations. So it would make sense if the family can focus more on more reassuring pieces of information. That I think in Italy there was a 102-year-old man who sort of recovered completely, and he had he survived 2 world wars and things like that as well. So also there are like daily these news. The idea is not to misinform them at all, so please ensure that the news that you're sharing is accurate, but it would make a lot of sense to share reassuring pieces of information with them. I think in terms, also another way to engage the elderly through this lockdown is now everywhere, if you see, Ramayana and Mahabharat have started on on television. And not just that, there are a lot of other older shows that have started again. Elderly might actually enjoy watching these shows, because even if they are in the early to mid levels of degeneration, and they have their long term memories fairly unimpacted by degeneration, they may be able to relate to them, they may find them familiar. Also, as I've already shared a link with you, there has been research that uh, watching TV amongst the elderly can actually lower depression, because it can keep them engaged. So these might be a good way to engage the elderly. If the elderly is absolutely unable to comprehend, or cannot if television shows cannot sustain their attention, that may be a sign of degeneration. And a substitute of engaging them could be old songs. So you could have old songs videos playing back to back. Typically, even if the person is unable to watch a series or a movie, because those rely a lot on your short-term memory, which is usually the first to be impacted, they are able to watch songs and enjoy songs, because there is a cued recall that songs are based on. And a lot of times they might even start singing. So that's a great way to sort of keep them engaged. I think those are about the recommendations that I have from my end. Aarti, should we move on to the
Sure.
questions?
Thanks, Tanvi. That was actually super insightful. To begin, actually, we already got a question that has come in while you were talking. Parthasarathi asks, anxiety also increases because of information overload from different sources, both real and fake news. How to guide the elders on this? So I think you did mention about how it's important to share authentic information, but there are a lot of elderly people who do have access to WhatsApp. So fake news is all over the place, like, and especially with coronavirus, I think some of the things are just shocking.
Correct.
Right? They're saying that it's in the air and today the planet will align, it will move and all of that. So how do people who engage with the elderly tell them help them differentiate, and what is the best way to keep them safe, because a lot of them may not follow regulations because of this, and what is the best way we can tell them that they need to follow certain methods to ensure their safety in this time?
So what I mean, all our parents typically are susceptible to, falling for fake news on WhatsApp. What I have recently introduced my parents to is alt news. So I've told them that, there is this site where you can go and you can check if it is fake or if it is, true. It also helps if your parents are social media savvy. It might help that you encourage them to follow pages which bring more authentic news, or sources that bring more authentic news or authentic pieces of information. Also, in that sense, then TV is a little safer, because I mean, safer, not entirely safe, but safer, because TV, the news on TV will not entirely have fake news as much as on WhatsApp. So I think getting the parents to reconsider, or and when you approach these discussions, try not to approach them from an attacking point of view, where you are telling the elderly that, oh, you know nothing, this is all fake. Try telling them, what, why don't you read this has a better, the news here are quite good, and there is so much information on there. So when you try getting them into reading more accurate sources of information, I think that might help you combat how to battle the fake news versus real news thing. With respect to the anxiety, unfortunately, I think that is true for all age groups, where we have to really, decide on a certain time that we devote to news consumption in a particular day. So give it like maybe 10 minutes or 15 minutes or 1 hour, whatever your bandwidth is that that you can take, and that doesn't make you feel anxious. I think every individual, elderly or whatever age, needs to identify that, and then devote or consume news accordingly.
Yeah. But I think it's also important that they, while we are giving them that information, that we also constantly tell them, if they say, for example, forward any message that may be fake, would it be a good idea to always tell them that, this doesn't seem like it's authentic, I just wanted to let you know? Is that okay to do?
Yeah, it's okay, but it's better if it is backed by a link, to be
Okay.
honest, because
Okay.
at no point do you see. You also have to understand that within very often where this happens is on family
Correct.
WhatsApp
Yes.
groups,
Yeah.
and there might be certain family undercurrents or dynamics that might be at play even outside of COVID. And even suggesting to somebody that what you are circulating is fake might not be, you do not want the concern or the reason why you are pointing that out to be lost under some dynamic or some tension that exists from back then. So it would just maybe also make sense to support it with a link that corrects it, or that shows that, I think very recently there was a video which was probably shot in a hospital in Pakistan, that was circulating as something that happened in India. And much later there were websites that showed that, oh no, this is an old video from Pakistan. So maybe trying to change would help if you post that link, because then you have the evidence right there. Also, it will help not trigger other emotions possibly. It's not important whether the recipe is amazing, or whether the code that they are giving is perfect. It might be outdated, but it is important to make them feel important, because that is a sense, or that is a feeling that they usually derive from their avenues of socialization, which are currently not accessible to them. So it is important to kind of make up for that
Okay.
feeling.
Actually, speaking about degeneration, we had a question by Nikita, who asked about what the earliest signs of degeneration are, and is there a way to detect these things much before it becomes obvious?
So this is what I usually, with respect to degeneration, what happens is that most degeneration now, even so there is increasing research now that, there's no research, sorry, there is an increasing number of cases in countries like the UK, where, there are people who are as old as 45, or 50 who are also diagnosed with different kinds of dementias. There are certain kinds of dementias that actually start earlier than, say, an Alzheimer's. Although Alzheimer's also now, there are people who may have a genetic, who may have a genetic component who may be predisposed to it earlier than the others. The idea is that there is no way to tell if you are the one who is going to get it earlier than the others. So just what I usually recommend is just that, while we can always hope and pray that we don't get it, it might be a good idea to sort of ensure that you are regularly checking yourself, or you are regularly checking your parents after maybe, say, the age of like 45 or 50. Especially for Alzheimer's, there is a kind of dementia called frontotemporal dementia, which, there are cases as young as 32 and 25 also in the UK. So, I mean, for globally is, changing rapidly, but until now, the way to detect it is, in the initial stages, maybe brain scans, and you should probably talk to your neurologist and figure out what kind of brain scan they prefer, and try and get that on a regular basis, maybe like once in 2 or 3 years, maybe say onwards the age of 45 or 50, because in the extremely early stages, it may not reflect entirely on neuropsychological or other kind of test batteries. With respect to the earliest signs, that entirely depends again on what kind of dementia it is. But like if I were to refer to Alzheimer's, which is the most common form of dementia, you would see that there would be lapses in their short-term memory, which is what is most confusing for families, because elderly will remember stuff from 50 years ago in excruciating detail, but they might not entirely remember that you asked them to keep the key there somewhere safe on this morning, or this morning, like today morning. They might not remember that. And a lot of times kind of this is, so that is definitely, there is some research also that says that in the initial stages, the sense of smell might be affected, what we call olfactory recognition might be affected. There is some research that says that visuospatial reasoning may be affected. So falls are a good way to kind of check why visuospatial reasoning means that the judgment, when we walk, we sort of judge how high or how low or the ground is, or whether it's dry or wet or slippery, and falls might be one of the indicators. However, because these conversations are not very commonplace amongst the elderly, although falls are common, they are usually attributed to bad knees, bad hip, bad eyesight, but never to possible degeneration. So that is something that we need to start maybe reconsidering.
Also, I suppose just them not wanting to be put in that bracket of having neurodegeneration itself might be a difficult task to get them to admit that that's possibly something that's happening.
Yeah, but maybe you don't have to get them to admit.
Okay.
Like I said, even if an elderly does not have a history of mental health issues, or does not have a degenerative disorder, it is important to focus on their mental health requirements, because imagine they may have a busy packed day. They may, like I said, their routine is extremely important. The routine for an elderly person plays a very big role in ensuring good mental health, possibly more than it does for us. Because that's where they get their sense of orientation, their sense of normalcy from. And one thing that the lockdown has definitely impacted is the routine. Which is why it is extremely important that we try and we safeguard the mental health of all elderly concerned, and even over and above that, the pandemic itself and the news itself causes great deal of anxiety, and could in Wuhan and Italy, there have also been instances where it has led to depression. So if an elderly already has a pre-existing history of anxiety or depression, please do not hesitate to contact your psychiatrist, and stay in touch with them regularly to kind of evaluate and reevaluate the medical the needs of the elderly, and whether the medicine needs to be changed or upped or lowered or whatever it is. So please ensure that the psychiatrist is updated about their condition, especially if you feel that that is alarming. But even amongst the elderly who do not have a mental health issue, this is a time of intense stress, and this is a population who knows that they are at risk. So what I refer to as death anxiety is something that is that exists, or that is one of the effects of the lockdown and the pandemic that is surrounding us. So I think that needs to be really addressed. Also, not having a routine means not having a sense of purpose. So while even if our routines have changed, we will constantly be on the laptop working or watching a series. That does not come that naturally to the elderly. So it is important that whatever routine can be transitioned online is, and if there is nothing that can be done, it's at least important that families call the elderly, and friends call the elderly on a regular basis and keep them engaged.
Okay. So since you did mention that the routine gives them a sense of orientation, a sense of purpose, another question that was related to that is that my parents are a little stubborn in their beliefs and daily routines. It's really difficult to make them agree to some lifestyle changes. They get angry when I explain the need for lockdown and social distancing. What do I do?
So unfortunately, if this is if this is their personality, this has been their personality, you can't change it. And this is also not the time for you to try and change it or try and change their point of view. uh, in my experience, what has worked in cases like these usually is, without making the elderly defensive about their lifestyle choices, you try and you introduce them to alternative lifestyle choices which might make them more compliant, which might make them comply with the rules of the lockdown better. So when I say that, most elderly want to go down, for instance, not necessarily only because of the physical activity or for the fresh air, but also because they associate going down with meeting a certain set of friends at that time. Okay, so if you kind of introduce them to calling that set of friends at that particular time, and you introduce them on as to how this can be done on a video call, etc., there's also a certain level of thrill, or there is a certain level of there's a certain novelty factor that comes with it, that, oh my god, like I can talk to my friends on a video. I think that is extremely important as well. So arming them with alternative choices, or arming them with alternative resources, is a good way to slowly go for the change. If you are going to try, if you will attack their, or if you will question, or if you will or if you are very condescending towards their choices, or if you really try to push down how that age group is impacted and what is happening, that can really also be very detrimental to them. So maybe trying and approaching it from a softer, smarter space, a more constructive space, might, I think, be more might make for a more effective solution than telling them that don't go here, don't do this, don't do that. And at some points we unfortunately have to let go a little bit, I think. But we can't afford to do that in this particular situation. But I think that is a balance that each individual also has to find, and try and apply that.
Yeah, true. Priyanka asks, what can I do to ensure emotional well-being of my elderly parents who are staying in another city? So this is
Okay.
assuming that they don't stay with their children. So.
Okay. So, hi Priyanka. First of all, thank you for your question. So, with respect to what you can do, like I suggested, try and call them on a regular basis. Also, if it is only you calling them, try and also try when you call them. try and introduce them to video calls and how it works. Make them try it a few times with you. If they are already familiar, then you can also encourage them to call their friends at a certain time. We know somebody, one of the elderly that we work with is, because we started our therapy sessions with the elderly on video. The elderly then asked us out of curiosity that, I'm wondering, would it help if I move my yoga sessions to video as well? And now we're also, I mean, not we don't do yoga, but the elderly also then contacted the yoga therapist, who was more than happy to take the sessions online. So they moved these sessions online. So I know somebody else, I know another elderly who takes Zumba classes online. I think we have the gift of technology, so we can try and we can use that as much as possible. Another fun way to engage your parents could possibly be, if you have an extended family that is supportive, you can possibly get them together on a video call. Maybe you can play Antakshari, or you can play Housey, or any games that that the elderly enjoy. Or you can have a group art activity together on a Zoom call, or you can just have it with your parents. If you are somebody who is working and you possibly can only call your parents only certain times a day, uh, an option you can explore is, maybe, like I said, setting up a rota with maybe your siblings or your cousins or your aunts and your uncles. So at every few hours, somebody is calling your parents and talking to them. So with respect to engagement, that is what I would recommend.
Thanks, Tanvi. The other thing is moving on to caregiving, right? So a lot of people at this point don't have their regular help, and you mentioned that many people have their caretaker staying with them. That doesn't necessarily have to be the case for everybody. So, and because of the lockdown, the caretakers aren't able to make it to the elderly person's house. So, in cases where people stay with the elderly people and they have a lot of office work or general household chores to take care of, what are different ways they can take care of themselves to ensure that they don't burn out, and also how can they ensure that the elderly person is well taken care of and the frustration and anxiety of the situation isn't all pervasive in the household?
One thing that is extremely important and also extremely difficult to do is, for the caregiver, that is for the child, to sort of draw a balance between three things. One is their work. Actually, four things. One is their work. One is the logistical aspects of living, which is, at this point, all of us are doing the cooking, the cleaning, all of it. Then comes the caregiving, and then comes the self-care. So, there has to be a structure that has to be put in place, wherein you set a routine and you adhere to it as much as possible. uh, if the person is that it also depends greatly on what is the level of care that is being provided to the elderly. So if the elderly in question needs the kind of care where the son or the daughter has to also bathe them, has to also feed them, please recognize that um, bathing, or any activity that requires the elderly to declothe in front of you, um, these might be periods of heightened anxiety, restlessness, and aggression, because these are also the periods where their dignity is in question. And if the person is not used to seeing you at that time, they may display a certain sense of aggression. So try not to take it personally, because this is especially if they are degenerating, this is very, very common. If the care only involves uh, you know um, ensuring helping the parents out with technology, or ensuring that they are fed, etc., but not really in terms of their hygiene, where what we call, their ADLs, their activities of daily living are fairly intact, but it may be the instrumental activities of daily living, the IDLs, which may be affected. I think maybe bringing in that balance is slightly easier than if the ADLs are affected. Also, please don't hesitate to reach out for help. If you have other family members living with you, it might really help to split tasks. If that is not an option and it's just you and your parents that you care for, maybe you could speak to your team at work, and maybe you could let them know that your bandwidth at work might be slightly affected, or that maybe you slot certain times for your work where the elderly are likely to be resting or likely to be sleeping, and you won't be needed. So I think these are some strategies that I can offer. Also, most importantly, don't forget to set time out for yourself. And it's a very difficult, unprecedented situation that we are in. uh, if you feel that you really need to speak to somebody, there are a lot of helplines out there. Even BMC in Mumbai has a helpline for mental health. There are a lot of therapists that are at this point offering their services pay as you go or pro bono. Do not hesitate. There are, or if you can afford to pay, just set up an appointment, and do not hesitate to seek help. If the caregiver has a history of a mood disorder, or any mental health condition and is on medication for the same, also keeping in touch with your psychiatrist to ensure that you are in the best capacity to get through this will help. So I think those are recommendations that I would make for the caregivers.
Okay, thanks, Tanvi. We have another question from Ranjita. She says, we're all worried and anxious during these times. How can an older person I know, oh, sorry. Okay, an older person I know is feeling distressed because of a situation. I'm worried about my elderly family members' well-being now that we know that the elderly population are more at risk. My sibling says I'm taking it too far. How can I convince them that it's important to take extra caution now? And how can I tell if my worry is getting too much?
Okay, this is a very long question, so we'll break it down in parts.
Yeah.
So in terms of, so first of all, Ranjita, thank you for your question. And, in case we are misunderstanding your question, or are not able to, are not answering it properly, please feel free to, I think, type in, so that, Aarti and Shweta can then communicate the question. But what I would say is, in terms of what is the distressing situation, is this, if this is something that you possibly can help by staying safe yourself, uh, then you should. If you feel that, I think an important boundary for us, and especially now, to recognize is, where does that fine line between our concern and their actual well-being come in. A lot of times, we are concerned to a point where uh, we are overshadowing what is actually in their well-being. We are overestimating, and we feel that, oh, they need this, they need this, but maybe they just need a little lesser than that. And in that mismatch is where we find our triggers for anxiety. So I think it would be, if like a sibling is saying, if backing off, you feel, would not really uh, change, I mean, would help the elderly feel more at peace, then please, or if it doesn't make a difference to their current state of well-being, but it makes a difference to yours, then yes, backing off would make more sense. But of course, this is also a very specific question. So I would really recommend that you also reach out for support, and you discuss this at length, so you are guided accurately, and not basis a question. But good luck. I hope it works out.
Thanks, Tanvi. So yes, I think we've had some really great insights today, and the biggest takeaway, at least for me, from this is that, accustom them to technology, shift their routine online as much as possible, and possibly call frequently. I think that's a great tip for people otherwise, even if there's no lockdown, if a lot of people do have parents who are staying away from them, and it might be distressing in general to know that someone who's elderly is by themselves. So thank you so much, Tanvi. It's been great connecting with you. And to all our viewers, I'd like to let you know that White Swan Foundation has a lot of information on geriatric mental health, and we are currently doing a lot on well-being during the current COVID-19 pandemic. We do have a weekly newsletter that goes out every Wednesday. So do sign up. I think the link would come in the comments section, and you will receive one tomorrow if you sign up today. Thank you again, Tanvi. It's been wonderful talking to you.
Thank you, Aarti. I also just quickly want to, say that White Swan Foundation has actually put together a great newsletter for elderly mental health during this pandemic, and I would encourage all of you to, definitely take a look at it. It has a lot of resources. It has a lot of experts giving in their insights, and you would definitely find it useful. Thank you so much for Aarti and White Swan for having me over.
Thanks, Tanvi.
This was lovely.
Thank you.